Written over 2,000 years ago, Titus Lucretius' Carus epic poem expresses completely modern notions. For example, empiricism, a theory of atoms, a theory of evolution, the notion of prehistory, and Epicureanism's morality and psychology. Helping to ignite the Renaissance, it is considered most important. On this video, you may learn details about a section of this epic poem. Lucretius Book 4, Touching the Light. The author once again explains why he is writing on this subject in verse. He wishes to make the emotionally challenging topic easier to digest by way of providing a pleasant medium. A poem then starts a discussion on none other than light itself, at least in reference to how it is that we come to see, perceive. His explanation is curious in its imagery and its description. Consider.
Scaled off the utmost outside of the things. Flit hither and thither through the atmosphere. And the same terrify our intellects. Coming upon us waking or in sleep.
This is confusing until you realize that Lucretius thinks that dream visions are fundamentally similar to real vision. The poet argues that all objects, all matter, emit extremely small particles. Some of these are detected by the eyes. By the way, he does contend that some things, like fire or the sun, emit more particles of light than others. In describing this process, he makes various analogies to the likes of serpents or insects shedding their skin. Therefore, he seems to believe that atoms and objects somehow separate and travel until they are captured by the eyes and used for vision. Then he proceeds to explain how mirrors work, especially why and how curved mirrors distort the reflection. This is a surprisingly accurate understanding of the phenomenon, save for the fact that now it is understood that light are not rays of particles, but something a bit more bizarre. To prove that such smallness exists, smallness that cannot be seen but instead makes sight possible, Lucretius provides the following example or analogy.
First, living creatures are sometimes so tiny that even their third part can nowise be seen. Judge, then, what must be the size of their organs. What of their sphered heart, their eyes, their limbs? The skeleton, how even tinier they must be.
Yes, in other words, ants that are so small, their parts, such as their eyes and stomachs, must be invisibly small to human eyes. Returning to light and vision, the poet argues that light moves, but that it does so extremely fast. He offers two proofs. First, that reflection in a mirror is seemingly instantaneous, and second, that the reflection is permanent, everlasting. The second point is a bit of conundrum in my own understanding of physical reality. Consider the lines.
And made of tiny bodies they are quick. Of that class is the sun's light and his heat. They cannot stop, urged on from behind. For light by light is instantly supplied. And gleam by prior gleam is pushed.
The meaning is that light has to push itself, the particles behind must push the ones in front. Yet, asks Lucretius, how is the whole of space not filled with light? Ergo, he concludes, although there is so much light as it is constantly emitted, it moves quickly enough to reach the vast infinite spaces of the cosmos. Segueing into a discussion about all the senses, Lucretius first indicates that the ability to feel is ever present.
Nature grants nor rest nor respite of the onward flow. We are submitted to incessant feelings, and all the time are forced to witness, and smell all odor, and hear all sound.
This is to say that indeed all the seemingly empty air is, must be, filled with invisible atoms and filaments. Speaking of the sun, the main source of light, the poet says,
because his strength is mighty, and its rays heavily downward from on high are thrown, and strike the eyes, disordering their joints. So piercing lustre often burns the eyes, because it holdeth many seeds of fire.
The point is that the sensation, potential harm, caused by too much light is proof that light is a material object that strikes the sense organ. I should note that he takes the parallel movement of shadows as proof of the ever-permanent ray of particles that is light. Further on, the poet explains visual distortions and illusions.
The ship in which we sail moves, although it seems to stand. And hills and fields seem fleeing fast astern. The stars, each one, seem still, fixed to ethereal domes, though truly they are all forever moving.
There is also mention of what happens after you rapidly spin around, of the seeming standstill of the sun and the moon, and the peculiar reflections of the moving waters of a river. Unfortunately, I do not quite have the experience of riding a horse across a river as Lucretius describes. Anyways, all the prior is to say that the senses should nonetheless be trusted. Yes, even though, aside from the prior, there is the added trouble of dreams and involuntary imaginations.
Again, if one supposes that naught is known, then doubt itself not known, since he confesses not to know.
The prior must be, surely, an attack or defense against skepticism. Remember, the skeptics distrust perception because of self-delusion and because of material, external distortions. What is more, they also doubt reason, logic. Therefore, the question turns into what is truth? How can truth be established?
What, besides our senses, is worthy of greater faith?
The point is made that the senses cannot be taken as contradicting one another. Rather, although it is true that they may differ, that is because something is causing the difference. In fact, difference of perception between the senses may be proof and premise for a discovery. Yes, this is as a modern scientist would have it. Sense perceptions are the premises out of which truth may be logically deduced. The philosopher changes from light and sight to sound and hearing. These are, according to him, also due to atoms, their shape and texture determining their sound. These fly from the throat across the air and reach ears that hear. Of course, that is not a correct description of the phenomenon. He does, however, jeer at people who claim to have heard divinity or mythical creatures in secluded places where only themselves could hear it.
And wonders of this ilk they love to tell, lest they be thought to dwell in lonely spots, where even by the gods they are deserted. Greedy, as all mankind hath ever been, to prattle fables into any willing to hear.
The biggest question with sound is how it can be heard through solid objects. Lucretius has it that the particles may travel through objects as these contain gaps, voids. Since the gaps are not as if straight tunnels, therein the reason why the sound is dulled and jumbled. As to how collisions and movements make noise, well, he almost touches upon the real nature of sound. Yes, he makes an analogy to how fire spreads as if this were the natural behavior of the alleged noise particles. Now let's talk about taste. The principal issue, the poet declares, is why some part of the flesh, the tongue or palate, may taste while no other parts may do so. Although he has already mentioned his beliefs on this matter, he reiterates that the tasting organs are more sensible. They have a surface that may detect the shape of the atoms that rub across it. This detection produces the sensation of taste. Yet not all taste the same for all tasters. That is not an issue as in fact.
Food to some is fierce poison. To us, fierce poison is the hellebore, but puts the fat on goats and quails.
To account for this, says the poet, consider that as animals are diverse in appearance, so too must they be in constitution and configuration. In the case of the apertures which feel taste,
as the combination and motion of their diverse shapes demand, the shapes of apertures must be diverse. Hence when what is sweet to some becomes to others bitter.
These biological facts even explain why taste changes in times of sickness. He has it that when sick, the inflammation caused by the sickness alters the tongue's apertures and thus the taste of food. Now comes the question of smell. I like how he references the geese that alerted the Romans that were besieged in Rome's citadel during the Gallic attack. This is a historical event described by many historians. Either way, this is to say that different animals have different smelling powers. Then returns the question of sight. He reiterates the belief that all objects emit some light. This explains, according to him, why the lion is afraid of the rooster. Yes, apparently lions are afraid of roosters. He has it that roosters must emit a light that is detected and nauseous to lions' eyes. To end the first half of this book, the poet has it that taste particles do not move. They stay with the object. They are clearly a more detailed sense of touch. Odor and sound particles are relatively large, slow, and easily lost in the wind. Even so, they are touched by the nostrils or ears. Finally, the particles of sight, light, are the smallest and super fast. These are touched by the eyes. In the second half of this book, Lucretius provides a lot of lessons about sex and love, but also paves the ground for his theory of evolution. Don't miss it. Now, to pique your curiosity, to motivate you to watch the last video of the series, I gift you a teaser sample of the many aphorisms I crafted as I read this author.
Although there may be many different causes, there is always only one single correct explanation.
If you enjoy or gain from my aphorisms, know that I have thousands. I will be writing books with short thematic essays composed out of aphorisms. These essays are profound and intriguing yet easy to read. For very cheap copies, look up Protagoras Pause in the Amazon website. I repeat, Protagoras Pause, that's my name.